Okay, so your GMO greetings. Yerase, we thank you for tuning in once again. I'm Odwirafo, Kwesi, Ranehmta, Akan Odwirafo of Akwamu Maruka, Etifi Mudi Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. So I'm doing this short live to go into some detail about the nature of our degree program, our Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy degree program within our institution, AKONGUASUA. We first launched this and let people know about this earlier this month, at the beginning of May and so forth. We didn't go into some detail about that about a week ago. We did a much longer piece, but we wanted to get into this notion of what is the nature of this field of edupreneurship, which is an education entrepreneur, because that is the direction that we are going. We have a philosophy, a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy in the Akan language. That title is NIMDEESEM. We'll get into that. But, on your diploma, on your certificate, it will say Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, but also the Akan title, NIMDEESEM. But our focus is not simply, once people have that credential, they typically can go into a school, college, university, and so forth and teach. Our focus is educational entrepreneurship, or what is now called edupreneurship, where you utilize your credential to engage in entrepreneurial activity to generate income for yourself so you can be self-employed. Sometimes people start off self-employed on a part-time basis, and then they make it a full-time endeavor. Some people simply move directly into this full-time edupreneurship or education entrepreneur, mode. So this is what our focus is. We have, a degree program, 42 weeks, but it can also be a minimum of 21 weeks, but a maximum of 42 weeks. But within the first 4 weeks, you get the first 2 weeks, you get your first certification, the Susu Meditation Instructor Certification, and you can start, engaging in entrepreneurial activity right away within the first 2 weeks. So let's get into it. So as you see, this term edupreneur, education entrepreneur. So some people are unfamiliar with the terminology. The field is emerging. It's been emerging for decades now. It's very popular, utilizing that terminology. Now, people have been education entrepreneurs for, decades. But the terminology and the, force, especially after, the whole COVID piece, and there were many, many more entrepreneurs that were birthed during the, shutdown, and people emerged from that being more entrepreneurial and so forth, utilizing their educational degrees for entrepreneurship instead of waiting for someone to, give them a job and so forth. This is our focus. We want to utilize the credential that we have to impact our community immediately, tangibly, and long-term. So let's look at definitions first. What is an edupreneur? An edupreneur, or education entrepreneur, markets their expertise and skills to public or private schools, colleges, and universities, or for-profit and nonprofit organizations using a learning platform. These professionals are educators who share their knowledge. They're also entrepreneurs because they sell their knowledge often through pay-to-access systems. Edupreneurs consider education to be an economic resource because it impacts the perceived and actual success of educated individuals in today's society. The importance of education permeates most career paths. For example, many industries require a certain level of education for their employees. Now let's give a related definition. This is more of a, philosophical definition of what an edupreneur is, just to give you a better understanding. An edupreneur is someone who creates a positive value shift with a specific economic resource of learning. So philosophically, this is the approach that we are utilizing. Now, let me show you a couple of things. You'll see that we utilize this image on some of the videos that we put out. And there are 3 images here. So for those who are unaware, we established our AKONGUASUA institution back in 13,001, so-called 2001. I published my first book in 12,998, which is so-called December 1997. That's the Ubin Shang, the Ancestral Summons. And to date, I've published 31 books. And recently, we just dropped the 32nd book. But the 32nd book is actually an anthology of 12 of the true historical and cosmological and philosophical books that we've already published. So this is actually the book we just released in March. NIMDEESEM, True Historical Anthology. And you will see that we have, it's a 600-page book, 8.5 by 11 size. It's in full color. We're going to talk about this one shortly. The Okra complex, the soul of Akan, talking about the nature of the soul in Afuraitkaitnit, the African ancestral religion and culture and so forth. Foundation of philosophy. So when you see this image here, right here, 27 of the 31 books, I took that picture a while back, but to date, 31 books plus this anthology makes 32, but that's actually an anthology of 12 of these books. So it's a compilation. It's been expanded and so forth. But so technically 31 books that I've published so far, hundreds of articles I've published, produced 2 documentary films. They are free right here on this YouTube website. You can check them out. And we have 42 online courses. So this right here, 31 books. This image here, let's switch over right quick. So these are 27 of the 31 books. This is an image of when I was in ancient Kemet, so-called Egypt, that is in the Temple of Seti in Abju, so-called Abydos, but Abju. And these are the 27 of the 31 books. Now, this next image is our website, AKONGUASUA, which is our institution page. And you'll see we have the advertisement for the new book, the new anthology. But this is the page for our institution. As we said, we established the institution in 13,001, so-called 2001. And just so you can see, this is a collage of the 42 online courses that we have curated. And this goes back, again, we published the first book in 97, 31 books so far, but we also have 42 online courses. We've been teaching since the 90s and so forth. We decided to begin teaching. The online branch of our institution began in 13,014, so-called 2014. So we were teaching and so forth here, different places around the country and also outside of the country. But then we started, and we also had a Blog Talk Radio show back when Blog Talk Radio was, popular before, going live on social media and so forth became popular. But then we started teaching on the Zoom platform. So in 13,019, so-called 2019, and we use the term 13,000 as the base because we're in the midst of a 26,000-year astronomical cycle called the Afuraitkaitnit. The whites and offspring call it the Platonic year, but it's called the Afuraitkaitnit, or the Great Year in the Akan language. Nothing happened 2,000 years ago because there was no such character as the fictional character Jesus, Yeshua. So we don't track time based on fictional characters. You will learn that when you obtain your degree, because one of our books goes into detail proving that Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Muhammad, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, Brahman, all of these characters are fictional, never existed of any form or of any race, and we show how these characters were manufactured. But we're in the midst of a 26,000-year astronomical cycle, hence the years beginning with 13. So 13,019, 2019, we started the online version in the context of teaching courses, 6-week courses, 4-week courses, 7-week courses, 13-week courses on the Zoom platform. That was about 7 months 7 or 8 months before the shutdown. So we were already on the Zoom platform teaching our courses. And then 7 or 8 months later, then the, COVID hit and everybody was on Zoom. But this is simply a collage of the various flyers of these 42 courses. When you scroll down on this page, you will see the original flyers for each course. For example, you see here, Achinebois, the original animal totems that represent male and female deities, forces in nature, and Kemet, the original animal totems from which they stole the zodiac symbols and so forth from. So we go into detail about that and the cosmology associated with that. But all the various flyers for the 42 courses. Here's one of the 42 courses that you will be studying. Res, the etymological origin of the term race, when we trace it back to its roots in ancient Kanit and Kemet. And you see the term in the Medutu, res. We go into detail about the etymology, biology, cosmology, and divinity of res or race. So when they talk about race as a social construct, the concept of race was created in the 18th century. That is pure foolishness, pure fabrication. We have the actual Medutun Torah, so-called hieroglyphic inscriptions, and the language itself, where even in the so-called great hymn to the Aten, written by the Pera, so-called Pharaoh Akhenaten, he talks about how the divinity established different men and women of different colors, and their skin colors represent their different dispositions, and they're placed in different parts of the world. Now, they're talking about, at that particular time, the different skin colors of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit African Black people, but that also extended once the white Nile Spring came into existence and degenerated into the depigmented group that they are. They're not naturally created. They're just a degeneration from the original. We recognize the difference between the melanin-dominant black and brown Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people, and the depigmented whites and their offspring. We understand the difference between skin color, race, and spiritual disposition that is part of our cosmology as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. There's a direct relationship between biology and spirituality, and we prove that in the language and culture and cosmology of ancient Kemet. Now, we're not going to go through all of these. When you look on the page, you can see, all of these pieces. This is a course on the Ubin Sheng, the Ancestral Summons. That is actually the first book that we published back in December of 97, 28 years ago. And that was the foundation for all the books that came after that. This is a 6-week course that goes into detail about that book. That is one of the 6 session courses that you will be studying. So when you scroll down, you'll see that we have, the various flyers from, all of the various courses, on the origin of the term yoga, Karakat, saw the origin and nature of the chakra based on our book of the same name, showing that yoga and chakra comes from yok and karakara, or yunk and karakara, stolen from the language of ancient Kemet, did not originate in India and so forth. So we have a number of different, courses that we put forward. So these are all the original flyers. That book that we just showed, the Okra Complex, the Soul of Akanfo, the Nature of Divine Consciousness, the divinity that governs the head, and the foundation of making proper decisions rooted in the divinity and the divine blueprint that every Afuraitkaitnit human being is given when they incarnate into the world. So the nature of the soul from the proper Afuraitkaitnit or African perspective. So we have these various courses, 40 of them on this page. That includes parts 1 and 2 of Medut Torah, divine inscription, learning how to read and write the language of the Medut Torah, so-called hieroglyphs. Hieroglyph is a Greek term meaning sacred writing, but the term in ancient Kemet is Medut. Hold on a second. The term in ancient Kemet is Medut Ntoro. Medut means sacred words, and Medu is plural for words. Medut is symbol, and Ntoro means divinity. So Medut Ntoro, some people say Medu Netre and so forth, but it's Medut Ntoro, the proper vocalization, is the divine or sacred words or inscriptions. That's the original title for, misnomer with hieroglyphics and so forth. So we have a two-part course on reading and writing the language of ancient Kemet, and of course to prove the proper vocalizations and the terminology and cosmology and multi-tiered and multifaceted cosmology associated with the language. We make comparisons between the language of ancient Kemet and the Akan language of Ghana and Ivory Coast, as well as the Yoruba and certain other languages. The same Akan dictionary, you can put an Akan dictionary next to a hieroglyphic dictionary, published thousands of years separate. And Akan people living in the forest belt in Ghana and Ivory Coast, you look in their dictionary and look at the words and so forth, and they have the same words with the same meanings and the same deities with the same functions in nature as you find in the Medut Ntoro, the hieroglyphs, thousands of years prior, because we're the same people who simply migrated from the east to the west a couple of thousand years ago and reestablished the ancient Khanate or Nubian empires and so forth. And then we migrated further south towards the forest belt where Ghana and Ivory Coast and Togo and Benin and Nigeria and Cameroon and Gabon and so forth are, and Liberia and Sierra Leone and these various areas. And then some of us a few hundred years after that were taken from those areas and forced into North, Central, and South America and the Caribbean. So we have a direct relationship. And we show that genetically as well as through archaeology and so forth. Just like Black people migrating from Mississippi to Chicago, some stayed in the South and some moved up north. Some of our people stayed in ancient Khanate, Kemet, Nubian Egypt. Some of us migrated west, continued that culture, continued the language, religious practice. And some of us, after being in the West for over 1,000+ years, were snatched up and forced over here. But we maintain the religion and culture and aspects of the language. So when you look at the Hoodoo tradition, which is Akan, the Juju tradition, which is Yoruba, the Voodoo tradition, which is Ewe, the Wanga tradition, which is Ovambo, these traditions that are maintained in North America, these are the same ancestral religious practices from Western Central Afuraitkaitnit Africa that came directly from ancient Khanate Kemet, unbroken for thousands of years across continents. And we go into all of that detail. So let's look at something I want to show you quickly. So that's just a few of the 42 courses, but so we showed this specific designation. Let me get rid of that right quick. Just to give you an overview, and you can look on different college websites and you will find basically the same structure. A Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy typically requires around 120 credits. This translates to approximately 40 courses, including major specific philosophy courses, elective courses, and courses fulfilling general education requirements. The exact number of philosophy courses required varies by institution, but generally includes a core curriculum of philosophy courses and elective courses outside of the major. Now, so the reason we showed that is to show that our 42 courses go beyond what, of course, you're going to learn with regard to Europeans and their system. And in fact, let me... So what you have here, again, is the collage of these 40 courses. Now we have 42 in total. This is a collage of the various ones. In our set of 42 courses, like as I said, with a bachelor's degree, you have a certain core curriculum, and that includes things like, composition and things like that. We don't have to, deal with that aspect of it. We can get directly into the, courses for the major. So we actually have more, like they'll have a certain number of courses that are core curriculum, and then they'll have courses for the major. our 42 courses go directly to the major. So you actually have more information on philosophy. Now, when you study in European, institutions, they're going to teach you about Greco-Roman philosophy and some aspects of, Asian Chinese philosophy. They may have a sprinkling of talking about something like about Zulu culture or some misinformation foundationally about an African philosophical principle or something. But it's primarily Eurocentric and European philosophy, information that people are not using now. People are not, utilizing the thoughts and formulations of fictional characters like Plato and Socrates and so forth. But you're going to go through and spend a great deal of time dealing with that. In our culture, in our class, in our philosophical degree program, we get straight to the point. We get to the origins of where that misinformation come from, because the Greeks went to Kemet to study. So did the Romans and so forth. So did the Persians. So did the Assyrians and so forth. And we carried that culture into Asia, into Southern Europe, and of course into the Western Hemisphere. But we get into actual real philosophy. When we talk about philosophy, right, it's such religion and culture and language and so forth, everything in the world revolves around that, because it's based on realities, based on the nature of reality as it is and how we align with the divine forces in creation and the order in creation. We have different languages and different ways to explain that across the continent and how we were brought into North America, but it's fundamentally the same thing, aligning with the reality of creation in harmony with divine order and defining that in an authentic way. And we govern our lives by that. It's not some old philosophy like Greek fake gods and so forth, and that's just mythology. When we talk about the forces in nature in our culture, that's still reality. The forces in nature that animate the sun, moon, oceans, rivers, the energy that animates the sun, animates the rivers, the oceans, the earth mother, the atmosphere, and so forth. We align with these expansive and contractive forces in creation in a harmonious fashion, just like animals do, just like plant life, mineral life, and so forth. We have the understanding of how to do that in a harmonious way. So our philosophy is living and so forth. Now, with them, it's philosophical, it's something to debate intellectually and so forth. They go into universities and they get paid to just talk about these different things. And sometimes they utilize that as the foundation for, going to law school and different things and how they process information. For us, again, we're dealing with edupreneurship. So once we utilize you study the philosophy, incorporate that, understand it, then we go out into the community immediately and begin to positively impact the community right away. Now, how do we do that? Let me show you an immediate example of that. I'm going to switch over to, so these are the 40 courses, but then I said we have 2 certification courses as well within the entire degree program. And the first one is the very first one you'll be tested on within the first 2 weeks. And let me show you why that is important. So, I mentioned earlier, Susu is the Akan term, ancient term for meditation. Meditation began in ancient Afuraitkaitnit tens of thousands of years ago, before white Europeans or white Asians existed on Earth. When only Black people were on Earth, we were already meditating. You see here, Amenhotep, the son of Hapu, in the meditative posture and so forth. So, this is a standalone certification course. It's a 4-week online course, but we've incorporated it in the degree program as well. So that's a 4-week course. You take it for 4 weeks, once a week for 4 weeks and so forth, and then you receive a certification. And that certification allows you to go out and conduct meditation sessions at places of employment, when employers bring people out for seminars to conduct meditation sessions with their employees to increase work productivity, in schools when they utilize meditation at the beginning of the day to assist students with behavioral issues, and as well as enhancing learning outcomes and so forth, in shelters, women's shelters, family shelters, social services organizations, a number of different applications for that, but you can utilize this credential. You're certified, and you can go out and immediately begin to conduct meditation sessions. They typically pay between $100, $200, $300 for you to come out and conduct a 30-minute session where you introduce yourself for a couple of minutes, share what's going to take place, have like a 15-minute session, meditation session, and then a question and answer for 5 or 10 minutes afterwards. That's a 30-minute session. You get paid $100, $200, $300 for that. And within the first 2 weeks of enrolling in our program for the bachelor's degree, you get your certification for SUSU. And now that you're certified, you can immediately begin to go out, utilize that credential to generate income for yourself. You're impacting the community in a positive capacity, but you're also generating income for yourself. If you look at the flyer, just for example, we say SUSU is the ancient Akan term for meditation. SUSU originated in our ancestral culture of Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, tens of thousands of years ago. This ancient practice has been utilized to regulate physical, emotional, and mental balance for millennia in varied expressions wherever our people have migrated in the world. The scientific benefits of meditation for youth and adults have been well documented, enhancing learning outcomes, regulating behavior, overcoming anxiety and depression, rebalancing hormones, lowering blood pressure, reducing stress, regulating weight loss, overcoming addictions, developing discipline, maintaining focus to overcome obstacles to short and long-term goals. Our meditation instructor certification is for individuals, independent contractors, educators, homeschoolers, human services professionals, behavioral health professionals, and others. As a certified instructor, you are qualified to contract with independent schools, charter schools, cultural organizations, corporate entities, women's and family shelters, community centers, colleges, and more to conduct basic meditation sessions on a daily, weekly, or periodic basis, and so forth. So the key with regard to that is when you enroll in our bachelor's degree program, within the first 2 weeks, we're going to talk about the testing process, but you test out, you receive your certificate for the SUSU meditation instructor certification, and you can immediately begin to utilize that to begin to book these sessions. You can go to a school and say, hey, we conduct meditation sessions, like a 15-minute session for your youth. You can show, and we talk about that in the course, to show them how this can enhance learning outcomes, regulate behavior. If you go to a shelter or some social services organization where there's a women's group and so forth, and they're helping them with getting jobs or placing them in, affordable housing, they have anxiety issues and things like that, they'll have someone come to the women's circle once a week, and you can share with them holistic health information, conduct a short meditation session, utilize that to lower, their anxiety, depression, regulate hormones, balance their thinking and so forth, so they can manage their lives and the lives of their children and so forth. We have direct, immediate, tangible benefits from basic, simple meditation sessions, not heavy into philosophy, but just basic breathing meditation sessions rooted in an African-centered or Afuraitkaitnit cultural context that benefits people immediately and tangibly. They see the benefit of that. It's been well documented. So various organizations, corporate entities, human services organizations, schools, cultural organizations are now utilizing people to come out and do that. And they typically need someone with a credential. And since, people have been getting these certifications from European organizations or Hindu organizations and so forth, giving misinformation, we decided to do this. We've been practicing meditation, or SUSU, for 30 years. We started publishing on SUSU over 20 years ago, but we decided, and teaching that, but as far as the certification, we decided to start certifying people last year. Prior to that, we would just, conduct meditation sessions and teach people about that, and, people come out and learn about it, and that's it. But we decided to start certifying certain individuals who are really interested last year. But we've been teaching it and publishing on it for 20 years, been practicing for 30. So that's the first certification that you will receive within the first 2 weeks. So you'll be able to go out and begin to generate income immediately. Once again, we have the most recent book, the anthology there. But on this page, you will see the front covers of the 31 books that we've published. Kukutuntum, Uben Sheng, Afuraitkaitnit, the origin of the term Africa, shown in the Medusa of the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet, the term Africa. Madanechi, the Okra complex, dealing with the nature of the soul, the divine consciousness in our ancestral cultural cosmology. Obatain, Afuraitkaitnit, womanhood. Oberima, Afurakani, manhood. Nkwamua, whole life journal. We talk about holistic health and so forth. Dealing with the Hoodoo tradition, war means dead. We have a number of different texts. One of the major ones here, Ankh, the origin of the term yoga. Karakasa, origin and nature of the chakra. Rekit Henasperet, the etymology and cosmology of the religion and spirit. So we show where those terms actually come from in the Medusa and ancient Kemet. These are not European terms. So we have a number of different publications here. The Kukutuntum, for example, is the book, this one where we talk about the origin of the fictional characters, Jesus and Muhammad and Moses and Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael and all of that. That's what this book deals with. And it's also in the anthology. So we have these 31 books. We've published in, over 100 research articles. We also have our, 2 documentary films. So we have a great deal of information to draw from, as well as information outside of that are included within these courses. Now let's go to the course page so you have an idea of when you enroll in the course, what takes place. 42 courses, 42 weeks to complete, and some people can complete it in less than 42 weeks. It's a maximum 42 weeks to get the bachelor's degree, but you can do it a minimum of 21 weeks, and we'll show how that works. And now we also did a video where we went into some detail about this for like an hour and 40 minutes as far as the programmatic thrust itself. So you can check that out as well. I just want to make some finer points here. So when you go to the AKONGUASUA page, of course, you see the book and so forth. We went here. So this is the piece we did like over a week ago. It's an hour and 44 minutes. So we go into more detail about the program. But when you scroll down, we have the link here. This is just a portion of the page. But when you go to it says read full description on our link, buy now. So when you click on the buy now link, you'll get taken to the page. And let me make sure you're able to see that. Okay, so when you click on that buy now link, this is the page that will come up. So it says NIMDEESEM. That is the Akan term for Bachelor of Arts in philosophy. We do have a payment plan option. The entire course is $600, but we have a payment plan option that you'll see at checkout where you can break it up into interest-free installments. So we talk about, the degree itself, NIMDEESEM. NIMDEE means knowledge or wisdom in the Akan language. NIMDEESEM means the issues or affairs of knowledge or wisdom. So that's a better, it's a term that represents philosophy in a more grounded way. So as we mentioned, we have 42 courses. They're reflective of the 42 assessors of Ma'at. Hold on a second, make sure we see. All right, the 40 Sepatu administrative divisions of ancient Kemet, the 42 sacred days in the Akan sacred ritual calendar, cycle of Adadrianine, which you'll learn all about that. But also, it turns out that, of course, on average, there are 40 courses that make up a Bachelor of Arts degree program in any major university or college. But again, some of those for them are core curriculum things like English and composition and basic courses that we don't have to deal with. So all 42 of ours go directly to the subject matter, the meat of the subject matter. Now, so we talk about the title of the name, NIMDEESEM. Now, we say the degree program is a maximum of 42 weeks. You study each course on your own, and then we have a weekly test, including a question and answer session on the Zoom platform. The most important aspect of that is that you understand the information. It's not just about memorizing dates and times and so forth. Of course, you will memorize things, but you need to understand the philosophy. So when you speak about that or share that with individuals, you have a full understanding of what you're studying. So, 42 weeks, each week. So say, for example, the first course, some of these 42 courses you saw were originally 4-week courses where we met once a week, for example, on a Monday online for 2 hours and went through the information and went through the book and so forth. And it took 4 weeks to get through the book. Some of those courses were 6-week courses. Met once a week for a couple of hours, went through the entire book. The ones that were associated with the book, some had other information and so forth. A few of them were 7-week courses. One of them was a 13-week course, but most of them were either 4-week courses or 6-week courses. Now they are all archived. So anybody can go to our page. They can see the archived courses. You saw the flyers for each one. And they can purchase the archived course, like the course dealing with race. That was a 6-week course. Originally, the 6 sessions are archived, so people can purchase that course for $15 and they can go through the course. All 31 books, the ebook versions of all 31 of our books, are free downloads for our website. We've always made the ebook versions free. So that's just, we've had that. The softcover versions we would sell, but the ebook versions have been free for over 11 years. So people access and download the free versions of our books for thousands of downloads per month, because we didn't want to, say that you can't get this information unless you have $15, especially if we have a, electronic version, an ebook version. So if people didn't have any money, we couldn't say, well, you can't learn that Jesus never existed and Muhammad never existed and how they manufactured these characters, like Muhammad from the river divinity Muhammad, the waters Mu, of Hatmet, the Northern Nile, the spirit that animates the Northern Nile, Muhammad, that they corrupted into Muhammad, and we show that deity Muhammad, and so forth. We can't tell people, well, you can't learn about that unless you have some money. If people don't have money, then they can't learn. That's crazy. So all 31 of our books are free downloads from our website. But then the softcover versions, we always sold. Right now, those softcover versions we are, combining into anthologies. And again, the first one, for those who didn't see, we released in March. It is 12 of those softcover books, all in one. On the back, you'll see which 12 they are. These are 12 of our books, all in a 600-page volume in color and so forth. So you'll see we did it in color because we needed for people to see these deities. For example, let me just give you a quick. So you needed to see, for example, the images when we were in ancient Kemet, in quote unquote Egypt and so forth. You need to see, for example, when we went into the temple of King Su in Ta'apet, so-called Thebes, and you see the goddess Ra'et, the female counterpart of Ra. So you have Ra as the creator of the universe. Ra'et is the creatress of the universe. Amen is the great father of creation. Amenet is the great mother of creation. Most people have heard of Ra and they mislabel him the sun god, but they've never heard of Ra'et, the female. There's always a balance of male and female. It's not just a male divinity or monotheism. It is polytheism. There's a great mother, great father, creator, creatress, ancestresses, and ancestors, goddesses and gods and so forth. But you need to see those colors, so we put that out that way. But so you go through the, we have these books. People can purchase the archive course. Some people are doing that now. They'll just go get a course. Hey, I want to study this course. They pay $15. They have access to the 6-week course. Or they have another one. They pay $10 for the 4-week course, and they just study it. But some people wanted to study the entire corpus, get tested on that. Once they're proven and tested on that, then they can obtain that degree and utilize that degree based on what they've studied as a Bachelor of Arts in philosophy. And then they can go out and generate income based on that credential. They can show that they have this credential. They can produce that credential, and people, you go to a corporation when they have, certain events, they see that you have that credential, and they will cut the check, and, that satisfies their funding sources. And then they can pay you to do a presentation. You go to schools, colleges, universities, human services organizations, cultural organizations, nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, and book these kinds of events. And once people see that hear that you've done great presentations that have helped people, then the word begins to travel. You can create your own website, social media pages, and you become an edupreneur, actually helping our people. So 42 courses, 42 weeks. However, say, for example, one of the 4-week courses, you're ready to test on it. So say one of the courses on the Hoodoo tradition, which is Akan ancestral religion in North America. One of them is a 4-week course. So you're ready to test on that course. So on a Monday evening, we do the test on Zoom of that course. Since it was only a 4-session course, you may, at the end of the week, so say Hoodoo Part 5, maybe you want to do Hoodoo Part 6 as well, and you do both Part 5 and Part 6, those 2 separate 4-week courses in the same week, instead of waiting until next week to test on Part 5. If you're ready to test on Part 5, then you can test on Part 5. So this is why we say it is a maximum of 42 weeks. So if you want to test, study the 6-week course, when you're ready on Monday, we go through that course. Okay, you passed that test. Now you go to the next course the next week, the next course the next week. After 42 weeks, you've taken a test for each one of the 42 courses. You pass that, and now you've completed the process and you obtain your degree. But some people may want to take 2 courses per week. Test on 2 courses per week. They're ready. They've memorized the information. They have a grounded knowledge of it. So instead of testing on Monday, and that's every Monday or every Tuesday or something, they want to test on Monday and Thursday. Well, they will complete the degree within 21 weeks. So it's the minimum, as we say here, a minimum of 21 weeks. Hold on one second. All right. We won't test more than 2 courses a week. So if you say I'm ready to test for 6 courses, we're not going to do that, because you need to have a full understanding of the information. You don't want to rush through it. And then there are time constraints with regard to us, because we have to test a number of people. So we have a limited number of spaces. As a matter of fact, we couldn't have 100 people within this session that begins this month in May. We couldn't have 100 people, because I couldn't, do 100 hours of testing every week. I wouldn't be able to get anything done. So that, a small number of people that we can actually enroll, this first segment to get the first set of degreed people and so forth. So, but minimum of 1, course per week, a maximum of 2 courses per week. Some people may do, 2 weeks sometimes and 1 week other times, and they may complete the course in 30 weeks instead of 42. Some people may complete it in 21 weeks. Some people, 42 and so forth. So. Now let's go down. We mentioned about edupreneurship. Let's go down and get to that piece. Now, we gave the definition here. We read this earlier. Edupreneur, educational entrepreneur. What an edupreneur is. We gave those couple of quotes from different websites. Now, the difference with us is we don't want to just have you come and get a degree. And then this is not just for you to, people to get a degree and then just to sound deep and to sound philosophical. And it's nothing silly or egotistical like that. You get this knowledge so you can share with the Black community, so we can transform our lives physically, emotionally, physically with regard to diet and lifestyle, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, socially, economically, politically, on all levels. So we want to be able to empower you to immediately begin to generate income. As we said before, the first course you're going to take test on is the SUSU course, the Meditation Instructor Certification. That's the first course you would test on. So you'll study that course. So you study the courses on your own time. When you're ready to test, you come in and say, okay, I want to test next Monday. We test you on that SUSU course. That was a 4-week course. So it was a 4-session course. Go through the 4 sessions, make sure you understand. Once you understand that, not only have you completed that module for that week, but because the SUSU course, and then there's a part 2 to that, the Karakasa course, those 2 out of the 42, those 2 in particular have their own separate certifications as well. So you get immediately, you're certified in the SUSU course. Now you are a certified meditation instructor. And even before you get to the other 40 courses, you're already certified in SUSU, and you can use that certification to go anywhere in your city or around the country. Say, I'm a certified meditation instructor, just like anybody else becoming certified as a meditation instructor, around the country, and they utilize that credential to, get paid in different settings. You have a certificate and you can say, I'm a certified meditation instructor, and, you can start getting paid right away. So you don't have to wait the full 42 weeks to start engaging in entrepreneurship. The very first week you can do that. Now we have a list of edupreneurship or education entrepreneurship opportunities available when you have a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy from our program. We want to give this list to let people know there are many options. And as you go through the course, we show you how to do this. But there are many options to begin to generate income immediately. We don't want people just out there with a degree and they can't generate income from that. Because, some people say, oh, I just want to go and hopefully somebody will give me a job at a university. But we want to we have our own educational system, our own degree system, and then we also have a pathway towards generating income within our own educational system. Just like Europeans have that. They have their own universities, colleges. They accredit their own universities and colleges to say that they're legitimate. And then once they're accredited, then they can go to different, jobs, employers, and so forth. And they say, oh, you have a degree from here. That's an accredited university. Okay, well, then you can work at this place. Well, we have our own system. We have our own degree program. It's more extensive than what you would get in a, 40-course Eurocentric philosophy program, degree program. And once you complete ours and you're certified, we have our own accreditation process and so forth. And now we put you on a path to be able to utilize that degree in various settings within our own community to begin to generate income right away. And this is it right here. Okay, so I'll say, having spent over a decade in the field of behavioral health and working with community organizations, that's what I was doing prior to becoming an entrepreneur. We have identified multiple opportunities within human services agencies and organizations, cultural institutions, schools, and more to serve the community and be compensated from funds already set aside for that purpose. All these organizations have funds set aside already. They just need people to come who have a credential so they can cut the check for you. For example, in the field of mental health, Alcoholics Anonymous group circles, they're small group circles that meet in most neighborhoods and have funds set aside for people to sit with the group and share their cultural knowledge to inspire participants to be resilient and overcome their addictions. It can be a one-time presentation to a group or may develop into a monthly appearance or weekly. They typically pay a credentialed speaker from $100 to $300 per session. The same thing with the Narcotics Anonymous or Gamblers Anonymous and so forth. So what you have is you'll see an agency, you'll see a mental health agency, a behavioral health agency, or a social services agency and so forth, human services organization. And they have people who come in. They may be court ordered to come in, or they may, for whatever reason, they come in dealing with Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, and so forth. And they have a group meeting, and they sit with their therapist or their case manager or social worker or community support worker, and they have a group meeting like once a week or once or twice a week and so forth, and they talk. But then they have funds set aside to periodically bring someone in, maybe once a week or once a month, to share additional information. You learn information about yourself that empowers you. So they'll bring someone in and say, well, we want to have this individual come in and talk about, approaching, discipline from a Afurakani or African-centered cultural perspective. And since they have money set aside for that, they're looking for somebody. Do you know somebody who can come and speak to my group for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes and have a discussion and bring a new perspective that will help them understand how resilient they really are? And they were born by nature as an Afuraitkaitnit person for that resilience. And then they bring you out. They'll pay you typically between $100, $200, $300 for that. If it's a larger organization, they may pay you $500. And you sit with the group and you share that information. And they may bring you out once a week or once a month, just periodically, depending on what it is. But if you have one group on one day and then another group on the other side of the city another day, you can generate $600, $700 a week just sitting with the group and speaking. So women's shelters and family shelters, we mentioned this earlier. Human services organizations have weekly group sessions for those in their programs to motivate the participants to find employment, find housing, break the cycle of returning to domestic abuse, homelessness, etc. Funds are allocated to pay various presenters on various topics, including holistic health, meditation, culture, philosophy, which is critical to shaping participants' self-worth and confidence, and more. They typically pay credentialed speakers between $100 and $300 per presentation. So once again, at these various shelters, they have workforce development. They assist the women or the families to get placed in affordable housing, jobs and so forth, accessing services, whether it's SSI or SSDI, whatever it is. And in the context of that, they have group sessions to help them with their resilience and discipline and focus and lowering their anxiety and things they can do on a regular basis. Your Susu meditation instructor certification is critical there because you can assist them with a basic breathing technique that can help them calm down in any situation so they're not super stressed all the time. And that's an immediate benefit. But we also have this, and I want to share this real quick. And this was developed in the context of when we were working in the field of mental health for over a decade in Chicago as well as Washington, D.C. Hold on a second. Let's take this down right quick and pull this up. So for those who are in the field of mental health and you're familiar with that, so we published a couple of documents, the Afura Whole Life Interventions, Therapeutic Intervention Model, but we also published the NIMDEESEM Principled Adaptability. NIMDEESEM Principled Adaptability, Individual Treatment Plans, and the Cultural Spiritual Domain. This is a training that we did for social workers, case managers, community support workers, therapists, psychologists, and so forth. And we go into detail of showing how, if you're in the field of mental health, you know that in treatment plans, the different domains that you work in with regard to treatment plans, they have something that's typically called the cultural or cultural spiritual domain of the treatment plans. And many people don't know what to do with that domain. They know how to work with people in the legal domain or the therapeutic, psychiatric domain and so forth, or with regard to housing or, workforce development, those kinds of things. But one of the domains that people can build in that domain in the treatment plan is the cultural domain. And, the mental health field is recognized that when people are grounded in their culture, they become more resilient, more focused, more disciplined. They have self-love, self-respect, and that allows them to overcome, these various deficiencies mentally, emotionally, and otherwise. We developed an entire training on how to use the cultural spiritual domain in treatment plans with Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit clients, youth as well as adults, and we've tested it for over a decade in Chicago as well as Washington, D.C. We had this training. We've trained, professionals, mental health professionals in this. So you'll have access to that. That's part of your training, that part of things that you will study. So you can go into any human services organization if they have groups and so forth, and you can share information that assists even the therapist. When you're working, speaking with their clients, the therapist will see, wow, this is helping me with this particular client's treatment plan. This is going to help them progress further. I need to bring this person back, even if they come just once a week or once every other week or once a month. This is going to help empower the client. So, but that's something that you will learn in detail. And we did a whole 2-hour, 20-minute presentation going through how to utilize the cultural spiritual domain and, treatment plans and so forth. The next phase, employer cultural events calendars. Now, this is important. So beyond the whole notion of mental health and human services organizations and so forth, when it comes to places of employment, they have budgets set aside. Many employers across the country have a budget for cultural awareness events. They seek out individuals with a credential to conduct 30-minute to 1-hour sessions or seminars or presentations for their employees that enhances, work productivity and so forth and morale within the corporation. They typically pay credentialed speakers from $100 to $500 for a presentation, depending upon the size of the company. So, January, Martin Luther King holiday, they may say, oh, we need someone to say something about, the legacy of Martin Luther King and so forth. They may want you to come in and talk about that, and they may have their own perspective on that. But you can come in and weave in how African philosophy or Afuraitkaitnit philosophy undergirds certain principles that he was sharing. Now, we're not talking about integration, but certain principles about Black people coming together and being resilient and fighting for, justice and things like that. You can weave in ancient Afuraitkaitnit philosophy and show how it manifests within our culture right here in North America. So everybody has some kind of MLK holiday, major corporations, and even small companies and so forth. They'll say, okay, Friday afternoon, we're going to have a presentation on that. Do you know anybody who can speak? We have the money set aside. And these organizations, corporations, as well as, not-for-profit organizations, they have budgets and they need to spend the money, because if they do not, when the fiscal year comes around again, if they didn't spend that money on these cultural events that was appropriated for that, then their budgets will be cut. So if they're coming up to a point where they haven't been able to spend that money, they will look for anybody. Hey, find me somebody with a credential who can come out here and speak. We need to find somebody so we can spend these funds so we can maintain this level of our budget. So that's in January. In February, Black History Month, employers across the country, small as well as large corporations, they have some kind of event, and you can go to different ones throughout the course of the month. You may have one every week or a couple of them every week at different small or large corporations. And you can do a short presentation, 15 minutes. It could be 10 minutes. It could be 5 minutes. It could be a half an hour. Just depends on what is what. But they pay for that. On Memorial Day, that is originally was established by Black people after the Civil War. Those who fought in the Civil War, it was an ancestral observance to honor the deceased who fought the War of Liberation, the Civil War for our people. It was called Decoration Day because they decorated the graves of their ancestresses and ancestors who fought in the war and died. Europeans took that day, moved it from May 1st to the last Monday in May, and changed it from Decoration Day to Memorial Day. But people have Memorial Day services. Once people find out, and many people are starting to find out, you see it all over social media, that Black people, quote unquote, African Americans, established Decoration Day as Memorial Day. And now people are having things at their jobs to talk about that. Hey, can you bring the person out and talk about how it was us who established Memorial Day? So the Friday before the Memorial Day weekend, when people want to leave work early and so forth, they'll have a little event and have someone come out, and they'll pay you $100, $150, $200 to come out and speak. Juneteenth has become popular because they made it a holiday, and everybody's having Juneteenth events, even when they don't know what they're talking about. These white corporations, they'll bring anybody out, and very often they bring out Black people who don't know anything, but they just want a Black person to talk about it. So they're misinforming people, across the board. So when someone has a degree in Afuraitkaitnit philosophy, it can show how our ancestral cultural philosophy was preserved in quote unquote African American culture in North America. You can come out and speak about that. Black August, that's the entire month. Similar to Black History Month, which is a month-long event, Black August, dealing with people who fought for our liberation, revolutionary movements, Black liberation movements, and so forth, has become very popular over the past few decades. Black August and different organizations have events where they talk about, and you present on different, revolutionary leaders and so forth, and they have people come out and present. Of course, Kwanzaa is the same way. They want somebody to, hey, we're going to have a Kwanzaa event. They want someone to speak about some principles. You can go to the event, but you can weave in your, Afurakani philosophy. And when you bring that information to bear, it's always going to empower our people. So you get the picture. And so that's for places of employment. Then, of course, for those who are interested in working with youth, you have schools and after-school programs, weekend programs for youth, summer programs for youth, multiple opportunities if you like to work with youth. Some people like to work with youth, some people don't. If you do, there are many, many programs. We talk about that, and very often they pay $100 to $300 per presentation. These after-school programs, in-school presentations, a number of different things. And of course, once again, one of the first things you will learn when you get, your first certificate within the first week and so forth for meditation instructor certification, many schools have been implementing like 5 to 10 minutes of meditation right after the first bell, at 9 o'clock and so forth. After their announcements, they have the kids meditate for about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and they recognize that it lowers their anxiety. It makes them more focused, more disciplined for the rest of the morning so they can get more things done and they don't have as many behavioral issues. And then after lunch, when they come back in, they'll do another little 5-minute meditation. They'll do the same thing in an after-school program. So that's become very popular because of all the literature that's been out showing how it, affects people's hormones and, brainwave activity and so forth. So they bring people out to different schools, and you can do that. That's one of the easiest ways to get in. You may have a once a week after school program that says, hey, can you come on Mondays to conduct a meditation session for our kids? And then you can show them a little chart with Medut and Toro hieroglyphs, show images of Black people in ancient Kemet and so forth, and how we created math and science and, medicine and everything else. And they're always, shocked by that and empowered by that. All right. African-centered bookstores, businesses, organizations, conferences, cultural events, spiritual events, study groups, etc. Many groups and organizations around the country who are already teaching some aspect of culture and philosophy in their communities. including those who have their own cultural centers or businesses, various little small Black businesses or large ones. They regularly have individuals come out to do book signings, teach meditation, yoga, holistic health, true story, culture, philosophy, and more from an ancestral cultural perspective or a body of information they are not aware of. The information in our courses and books is groundbreaking and of interest to such groups across the country, whether in your own community or an hour or two away from your location. You may drive a couple hours to another city and do a presentation at a Black business. They pay people to come out and so forth, usually between $100 to $500, or if it's a larger organization, more than that. So, and just to give you an example of what we're talking about here. For example, Kuku Tuntun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, we have the book, of course. We have a 6-week course that we did on the book, which you will be studying in the, piece. We mentioned this earlier. So this is the book. We talk about the cosmology of creation, the origin of, creation and so forth, Afurakani people. Then we talk about true story. We talk about how Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Moses, Aaron, David, all these characters are fictional. Jesus is fictional. Yeshua, Allah, Muhammad, Buddha, Brahman, fictional characters. Never existed of any form, any race. Now, when we talked about, for example, of course, this is where they get the fictional character Hensu, became Jesus or Yeshua, or Yeshua, Jesus, and so forth. They stole that from the divinity Hensu, Neferteperu. But you're going to have information that other people, individuals, do not have. So real quick, the male force, the expansive force, the energetic force that is moving through the Hapi or the Nile River right now. If you stand in the river, the expansive energy moving through the river right now is the divinity Hapi. It's an expansive force, electromagnetic energy. The expansive aspect of it is the male divinity Hapi, and the feminine aspect is the female divinity Merit. So in Northern Kemet, the Northern Nile, the energy that animates the Northern Nile, and people know that water itself is a conductor of electricity. So even if people said, well, the densest expression of this energy is electromagnetic energy moving through the water. Everybody knows in physics that water is a conductor of electricity. So the expansive energy within the Northern Nile is the deity Hap, but Met means north. So Hap, Met means Hap, the deity Hap of the north. That is the Northern Nile divinity. He's a twin deity. Hap, Reset. Reset means south. So you have the southern branch of the Nile that goes all the way to Kanit or Nubia. The northern branch of the Nile goes all the way through Kemet into the Watch or the Great Green, which is the Mediterranean Sea and so forth. So the northern branch of the Nile governs the northern part of the country, and it was the northern part of the country that the white Arabs invaded, and the Arabs have been there since, the past 1400 years and so forth. So they were very familiar with seeing these images of Hap Met and Hap Reset, but since they were in the north, Hap Met, the spirit force that governs the Northern Nile, was prominent in the north. Now, the word for water in Kemet is Mu. In English, it's water. In Kemet, it is Mu. So Munu Hap is the water, Mu, Nu of Hap, the water of Hap, the Nile water. Hap Met is the northern Hap. Hap Reset is the southern Hap. So Muhapmet is the waters Mu of Hapmet, the deity of the northern Nile. Muhapreset is the waters Mu of Hap, the deity of the southern branch of the Nile. Since they were familiar with Muhapmet, they took Muhapmet, the spiritual force that's animating the northern Nile right now, the energy moving through the Nile when you stand in and you feel the energy moving through. That's Muhapmet. and they corrupted Muhammad into Muhammad and said there was a white Arab who invaded and took over northern Kemet and brought Islam and all this other nonsense. They stole that from a spiritual force that animates the river, tried to turn it into a fictional cartoon character, male named Muhammad, and said you need to follow him. Somebody who never existed of any race whatsoever. So even when you go to cultural organizations and Afrocentric organizations and Black businesses and so forth who want something cultural, they don't know this yet, unless they've, our books have been out for a number of years, so some people have heard of this, but most people don't. So even amongst people who have been studying African tradition, ancestral culture, and all of that, they're still astonished when they get this kind of information or learn that Buddha is a fictional character, or Jesus, Yeshua is a fictional character, or Solomon and Sheba and Menelik, because people think the Queen of Sheba was a Black woman. She didn't exist. It's a corruption of a title of Aset, the goddess Aset, Aset. So a spiritual force in creation and so forth. Solomon never existed. So that's just some of the information that, will be shocking to even the average person who studies culture in depth. So the other piece is hosting your own events. You can pay $50 to $100 to rent out a community meeting room, a conference space to host your own event. You can be the sole presenter or invite others to present as well. Millions of our people on a weekly basis attend churches, mosques, temples, yoga sessions, classes on Buddhism, esotericism, holistic health, and more. Many are just as interested in Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral culture and philosophy, because it actually provides answers to all life's questions rooted in the authenticity of who we are. When you host events and people are aware of the offering, they will attend. You can also have vending space to sell your own products, or you can purchase books wholesale and sell them to further the attendees' education. And that includes, we can work out a situation where you can, you can get the wholesale version, get our book, wholesale, and you can sell that, or you can get other books that that are from other Black authors and sell those. It also allows you to generate income to cover the rental and profit from the event. You can also include food, like a vegan lunch, as a draw for your event. You have a local vegan food vendor or whatever, and you can do that. So let me switch over real quick. Now, as we said, so you have going through the 42 courses. All 31 books are free downloads from the website, so you don't have to purchase any books. You'll see that the tuition is $600, but what you'll also see is there's a payment plan option, and this is the payment plan option right here. On the checkout section, you see that there's an option for Afterpay, 4 interest-free installments of $150. So basically, Afterpay is similar to Affirm, just like if you purchase a flight, and you have the Affirm option, or you're on Amazon.com, you make a large purchase, and they say you can pay over time with Affirm. Afterpay is similar to that, a competitor to Affirm. So you can click Afterpay, and instead of paying the full amount up front, you would just pay $150, today, and then you pay the rest over time through Afterpay, and they spread it out over a number of payments that are interest-free. So you can do that, and many people opt for that. So their first payment is not the full lump sum, and you can move in that direction. But so when you see that the tuition is $600 and you can just pay $150 up front, you'll notice that many of these events that we talked about, you can make $200, typically $100, $200 for a smaller organization, a little bit more for a larger organization. So within the first 3 or so events that you book, you will have covered your tuition. The first week, when you study the SUSU meditation instructor certification course, and you're ready to test on that, and we talked about that, then you will receive your certification. We also, in addition to the 31 books, we have hundreds of videos on YouTube where we go into even other aspects of, the principles in cosmology and so forth. So you have a lot of information that you can draw from. So this is our certificate for the SUSU meditation instructor certification. So your name, of course, would be here. The title is Odwirafo, which means instructor in the Akan language. So you'll be a SUSU Odwirafo, which translates as meditation instructor, certified meditation instructor. So within the first week, out of those 42 weeks, your first test will be that 4-week course. Once you pass that test within your first week, you'll get this certification. And then now you are empowered with that certification to go to any of these places, organizations, and say, I'm a certified meditation instructor, and I can conduct meditation sessions with youth as well as adults. And once they see your certification, some people won't even ask for a certification, but many will. Once they see you have a certification, then they can cut that check, they can pay you for that. So you don't have to wait the full 42 weeks to get the full bachelor's degree to begin to generate money. You can do that within the first week. And again, once you book the first couple of sessions, maybe a $100 session at a school or place of employment, or a $200 gig at a human services organization or something like that. Once you do the first couple of ones for the first couple of weeks, you will have made your $600 back for the tuition, and from that point forward, you'll be generating income. And of course, once you obtain your full, bachelor's degree, you can go even further. But our eye has always been on empowering the people with information. You can take that information to empower our people, but you can immediately begin to generate income for yourself within the first week. The AKONGUASUA page on our website, and it's also in the description for the video. And you will see that there. Let me put that link in the chat room right quick. I just want to make sure we got that. Okay. Okay, so if there are no questions, we're going to go ahead and end it here. We look forward to everyone, joining with us. You can register now. We have a limited number of spaces because, again, we couldn't have like 100 people sign up. I could not test 100 people. I couldn't test 50 people per week because that would be like, trying to do 100 hours basically a week of testing. So we have a certain number of people. We have some spaces still available. May, this weekend, is basically you all will be the first group. So you can sign up now. We wanted to start this process around that whole Memorial Day piece, since our people established Memorial Day as Decoration Day. So you can sign up now, start your process. We will send you the information on the class, the first couple of classes you need to start studying, and then you can set up your first test, Zoom session, and we can move forward from there, and you can get certified. So if you sign up now, you can start studying. The SUSU course will be first, of course, and then at some point next week, you'll be ready to test for the SUSU course. You pass that test, and then you get your certification as a meditation instructor, certified meditation instructor, and you can begin by the end of next week or the following week, begin to book sessions and get paid for conducting these basic introductory sessions for adults and or youth and begin your entrepreneurship or edupreneurship journey. So, okay, so Yerase, we thank you all for tuning in, and Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. That's it.